The wrong human in the right place. Marcus Reed had always been good with languages. Unfortunately, he was terrible with everything else. Standing in the gleaming corridors of Station Omega 7, clutching his outdated translation device and a coffee-stained briefing folder, he wondered how Earth's diplomatic corps had managed to send him to the most important peace negotiations in galactic history. The space station orbited the contested world of Nexus Prime, a planet rich in quantum crystals that both the Kethmore Empire and the Veltaran Republic claimed as their ancestral homeland. For 300 years, these two civilizations had been locked in a bitter conflict that had consumed entire star systems. Now, with both sides exhausted and their economies crumbling, they had agreed to one final attempt at peace. And somehow, Marcus, who had gotten lost twice just finding the conference room, was their translator. Remember, Ambassador Chen had told him via subspace comm just hours before. These negotiations are humanity's chance to prove we belong in the Galactic Council. Don't mess this up, Reed. No pressure at all. Marcus adjusted his too-tight collar and entered the massive conference chamber. The room was a testament to neutral architecture, all smooth curves and soft lighting designed to offend neither faction. On one side sat the Kethmore delegation, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial suns. They resembled enormous praying mantises, but with 4 arms and an unfortunate tendency to click their mandibles when annoyed. On the other side, the Veltaran representatives appeared almost human, save for their luminescent blue skin and the delicate crystalline formations that grew from their temples, the source of their legendary telepathic abilities. They sat in perfect stillness, their large silver eyes reflecting an intelligence that made Marcus feel like a particularly slow child. At the head of the Kethmore delegation sat War Prime Thex Cora, a battle-scarred veteran whose reputation for ruthlessness was legendary even on Earth. Across from him, the Veltaran were led by High Counselor Dane Thys, whose telepathic powers were said to be so strong he could read thoughts from 3-star systems away. And there, seated beside the High Counselor, was the most beautiful being Marcus had ever seen. Zara Velquin was the Republic's chief negotiator, and she was stunning in a way that made Marcus forget how to breathe properly. Her skin held the gentle blue luminescence of her people, but there was something different about her. A spark in her silver eyes that suggested both intelligence and barely contained mischief. The crystalline formations at her temples pulsed with a soft lavender light, and when she glanced at him, Marcus felt his heart skip several beats. "Translator Reed," High Counselor Dane Thys spoke, his voice carrying the musical quality common to his species. "We trust you will convey our words with precision. Much depends on perfect understanding today." Marcus nodded, fumbling with his translation device. "Of course, Counselor. Precision is my middle name." It wasn't. His middle name was Eugene, and he really wished he hadn't said that. War Prime Thex Cora's mandibles clicked ominously. "Let us begin. The Kethmore Empire has suffered enough delays. We demand immediate withdrawal of all Veltaran forces from the Nexus system." Marcus carefully input the statement into his translator, but something went wrong. Maybe it was his nervousness, or the way Zara was looking at him, or the fact that he'd spilled coffee on the device earlier. Whatever the cause, when he spoke, the translation aloud, what came out was, "The Kethmore Empire has suffered enough, flatulence. They demand immediate withdrawal of all Veltaran forces from their personal space." The room fell silent. Marcus's face turned approximately. "The same shade as a tomato. That's not what he started. "Flatulence," High Counselor Dane Thys repeated, his musical voice carrying a note of incredulous amusement. "War Prime." Thex Cora's 4 arms began gesticulating wildly. "I did not speak of digestive functions. This translator mocks us." "Oh, no, no, no," Marcus said, panic rising in his voice. Let me try again. The Kethmore Empire demands. But his translator, apparently deciding to have a complete breakdown, began spouting random phrases. Purple monkey dishwasher, the Kethmore Empire enjoys romantic poetry, and demands a hug. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Then, from somewhere in the Veltaran delegation, came a sound he'd never expected to hear in a diplomatic meeting, a snort of barely suppressed laughter. It was Zara. The sound seemed to break some invisible dam. High Counselor Danethys's lips twitched. War Prime. Thex Cora's mandibles stopped clicking, and suddenly, impossibly, both delegations were fighting not to smile. Perhaps, Zara said, her voice like silver bells. We should take a brief recess, while Translator Reed repairs his equipment? Marcus wanted to disappear into the space between atoms. I am so sorry. This has never happened before. Well, actually, it happened once during a trade negotiation with the Centauri, but they thought it was a mating ritual and— Reed, Zara interrupted gently, and he realized she was actually trying not to laugh. Why don't you join me for coffee while the technicians look at your translator? 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in a small cafe adjoining the conference center, sitting across from the most important diplomat in the Veltaran Republic, and wondering how his life had become so surreal. So, Zara said, stirring her coffee with what appeared to be a tiny force field. Romantic poetry and hugs? Marcus buried his face in his hands. I think I've just ended humanity's chances of joining the Galactic Council. Actually, Zara said, and there was something warm in her voice. That might have been the most honest translation we've heard in years. Marcus looked up. Honest? Think about it. Your device stripped away all the diplomatic language, all the careful phrasing designed to hide true intentions. What came through was something real. Ridiculous, but real. She leaned forward, and Marcus caught a hint of her scent, something like starlight and winter mornings. Do you know what War Prime Thex Cora said to me after you left? Marcus shook his head. He said, at least this human doesn't lie with pretty words. Coming from a Kethmore, that's practically a compliment. Before Marcus could respond, the lights in the cafe flickered. Then his coffee cup exploded, not dramatically. It just quietly cracked in half, spilling coffee across the table. But as Marcus stared at the perfectly clean break, he realized something was wrong. The crack was too precise, too intentional. Zara was already on her feet, her crystalline formations blazing with light. Someone's targeting you with a sonic disruptor. A what now? Move. Now. They ran through the station corridors, Zara's hand warm in his as she pulled him along. Behind them, Marcus could hear the subtle whine of energy weapons powering up. Why? Would anyone want to kill me? He gasped as they ducked into a maintenance shaft. I'm just a translator. You're the translator, Zara said, her silver eyes serious. The one who made both sides laugh instead of declare war. Some people have invested a lot in keeping this conflict alive. As if to punctuate her point, Marcus's personal communicator chimed. The message was brief and terrifying. Stay silent, Earthmen, or join the space dust. The war must continue. Marcus stared at the message, then at Zara's worried face, then at his hands, which were shaking slightly. Well, he said finally, this is definitely not in my job description. Zara's laugh was like music, even in their hiding place. Marcus, Reed, I think your real job is just beginning. As alarms began blaring throughout the station, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what he'd gotten himself into. He'd come here to translate words, but somehow he'd stumbled into something much bigger and much more dangerous. And despite the terror, despite the confusion, despite the fact that someone apparently wanted him dead, he found himself looking forward to finding out what came next. Love, Lies, and Galactic. Peace over the next 3 days, Marcus discovered that being hunted by unknown assassins was surprisingly conducive to romance. Every close call, every narrow escape, every moment of shared danger seemed to draw him and Zara closer together. Their relationship had progressed from professional courtesy to something that made his heart race faster than any energy weapon. They met in secret, abandoned observation decks, empty cargo bays, even once in a supply closet that smelled faintly of disinfectant and possibility. Zara would bring him coffee, always checking for sonic disruptors first, and he would regale her with stories of his spectacularly failed diplomatic assignments. So there I was, Marcus said, sitting beside her on the observation deck as Nexus. Prime rotated slowly below them, trying to negotiate a trade agreement with the Rigelian Commerce Guild, and I accidentally told them that Earth's primary export was embarrassed mammals instead of agricultural mammals. Zara's laugh was becoming his favorite sound in the universe. What did they do? They were so confused they agreed to everything just to end the meeting. Marcus turned to look at her, struck again by her beauty. The crystalline formations at her temples were glowing soft pink. He'd learned that meant she was happy. Zara, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you spending time with me? I mean, you're this brilliant diplomat. You could probably end wars with a smile, and I'm the guy who accidentally started a food fight at the Centauri embassy because I confused peace treaty with pie treaty. Zara was quiet for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight outside. Do you know what it's like being telepathic in a world full of liars? Marcus shook his head. I can feel when people aren't being honest. Their thoughts have a texture, smooth lies, rough half-truths, jagged deceptions. It's exhausting. She turned to face him fully. But when I'm with you, Marcus, your thoughts are like clear water, pure, honest. Even when you're embarrassed or afraid, you're genuine. That's probably because I'm too stupid to lie effectively. That's not true. Her hand found his, warm and real. You're not stupid, Marcus. You're authentic. In a galaxy full of people playing games and hiding behind masks, you're exactly who you appear to be. Do you know how rare that is? Before Marcus could respond, his communicator chimed again. Another message. Last warning, Earthmen. The summit is tomorrow. Stay silent or die. This time, though, something was different. Marcus squinted at the message, then at his coffee cup, then back at the message. Zara, he said slowly. Look at this. She leaned over to read the message, and Marcus caught that wonderful scent again. But his attention was focused on something else entirely. The timestamp, he said. This message was sent 3 minutes ago, but look. He held up his coffee cup, showing her the still warm liquid. I just picked this up from the cafe 5 minutes ago. If someone was watching me closely enough to know I was getting coffee, they'd have seen you with me. Zara's eyes widened. But the message doesn't mention me at all. Exactly. Which means either our mysterious assassin has terrible surveillance skills or they already know I'm here because they have access to station security, Zara finished. Marcus, that's brilliant. Is it? Because I feel like I just figured out that water is wet. But Zara was already on her feet, pacing. If they have security access, they're not some outside faction trying to keep the war going. They're here, on the station, part of one of the delegations. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. Someone in your delegation or the Kethmores wants the peace talks to fail badly enough to kill for it. We need proof, Zara said. The summit is tomorrow. If we can't expose whoever is behind this, the war continues, and I become space dust. I got it. Marcus stood up, and for once in his life, he felt like he knew exactly what to do. Zara, I need you to trust me. Can you get me access to all the diplomatic files from both delegations? That would be highly irregular. So is trying to murder the translator. Marcus grinned, and he was surprised to realize he was actually enjoying himself. I may not be good at much, but I'm very good at finding mistakes in translations. And if someone's been feeding false information to keep this war going, there will be translation errors. There always are. 2 hours later, they sat in Zara's quarters, surrounded by diplomatic files spanning 3 centuries of conflict. Marcus had his translation device, newly repaired and coffee-free, and he was doing what he did best, finding the places where words didn't quite mean what they should. Here, he said, pointing to a document dated 50 years earlier. This treaty proposal from the Kethmore. The original says they're willing to share territorial mining rights, but the translation given to your people says surrender territorial mining rights. That's a huge difference. Zara leaned over his shoulder to look. And here, this Veltaran cultural exchange proposal. We offered to share our artistic traditions, but the Kethmore translation says military traditions. No wonder they refused. For the next hour, they found error after error, mistranslation after mistranslation, always in favor of conflict, never of peace. Someone had been systematically sabotaging diplomatic communications for decades. But who? Zara asked. Who has had access to translations for both sides for this long? Marcus was about to answer when his coffee cup exploded again. This time, he was ready. Instead of running, he grabbed Zara's hand and pulled her toward the door. I know who it is, he said as they ran through the corridors, and I know how to prove it. How? Trust me, Marcus said, skidding around a corner. And maybe invest in some really good life insurance. The next morning, the final peace summit convened in the Great Hall of Station Omega-7. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness what everyone hoped would be the end of the longest war in galactic history. Marcus stood at the translator's podium, his device ready, his hands surprisingly steady. War Prime Thex Cora and High Counselor Dainthai sat at opposite ends of the conference table, with Zara positioned perfectly to see everyone in the room. Before we begin today's negotiations, Marcus announced, I'd like to address a small translation error that's come to my attention. He activated his communicator and projected the threatening messages for all to see. Someone has been sending me death threats to keep me quiet about the peace process. Interestingly, these messages contain several linguistic quirks that are very specific to someone who learned Standard Galactic as a third language, with Veltaran grammar patterns and Kethmore vocabulary preferences. The room was deadly quiet. There's only one being on this station who fits that profile, Marcus continued. Someone who has been present at peace negotiations for over 50 years, someone who has had access to translate communications between both sides, someone who has a vested interest in keeping this war going because it's made them incredibly wealthy and powerful. He turned to face the head of the Neutral Mediation Committee. Ambassador Jorik Nem-Val, you're under arrest for conspiracy, sabotage, and attempted murder. The elderly Droxian diplomat's face shifted through several colors before settling on a sickly green. You have no proof, human. Actually, I do. Marcus held up his coffee cup, or rather the pieces of it. Sonic disruptors leave a very specific resonance pattern. And funny thing about Droxian physiology, you're the only species here that naturally emits sound frequencies in that exact range when you're agitated. Every time you tried to kill me, you were basically signing your name. Ambassador Nem-Val lunged for a concealed weapon, but War Prime Thex Cora was faster. 4 Kethmore arms pinned the traitor to the table before he could draw. For 50 years, High Counselor Dainthai said, his voice heavy with sadness, we have been fighting a war based on lies. 50 years of profit from arms sales, War Prime Thex Cora growled. 50 years of keeping us angry while you grew rich. What followed was the fastest peace negotiation in galactic history. Faced with proof of their shared manipulation, both sides agreed to an immediate ceasefire, territorial sharing agreements, and joint development of Nexus Prime's resources. When the accords were signed, War Prime Thexcora stood and faced Marcus. Translator Reed, the Kethmore Empire owes you a great debt. We offer you command of our newest dreadnought and the rank of Battle Lord. High Counselor Danethus also rose. The Veltaran Republic offers you a seat on our High Council and governance of your own moon. Marcus looked at the two most powerful beings in this part of the galaxy, both offering him rewards beyond his wildest dreams. Then he looked at Zara, who was watching him with those beautiful silver eyes, her crystalline formations glowing the soft pink of happiness and something deeper. "Those are incredible offers," Marcus said, "and I'm honored. But I think someone else has a better one." Zara stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the great hall. "Marcus Reed, I offer you something rarer than any ship or territory." She reached up and touched the crystalline formations at her temples. In Veltaran culture, it was the most intimate gesture possible, opening one's mind completely to another. "I offer you my thoughts, my dreams, my future. I offer you my heart, and the chance to spend our lives bringing honesty to a galaxy that desperately needs it." Marcus didn't hesitate. He took her hands in his, and when their minds touched through, her telepathic gift, he felt her love as clearly as his own. "Now that," he said, "is an offer I can't refuse." The great hall erupted in cheers from both delegations. In the end, Marcus Reed, the worst translator in human history, had not only prevented a war and caught a criminal, but had also won the Eli T. heart of the most beautiful diplomat in the galaxy, and for once in his life, he hadn't messed anything up. Well, almost. He did accidentally agree to a joint wedding ceremony that involved both Kethmore battle chants and Veltaran mind-melding rituals, but that's a story for another day. As Zara kissed him in front of the assembled representatives of two formerly warring civilizations, Marcus reflected that sometimes the best rewards come not from being perfect, but from being perfectly, authentically yourself. Even if yourself happens to be a disaster-prone translator with a broken coffee addiction and a talent for saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the right time.